GDPR, or General Data Protection Regulation, is a data protection law in the EU that governs data protection and privacy for all individuals in the EU and the EEA. We have known for some years that the law was on its way, but in 2018 it got enacted. And this is another one of those places where the EU has a much more proactive approach to IT security regulations versus the US. The US is a patchwork. When something breaks, we fix it. The EU actually has a plan. And for the GDPR, it does not matter where we are based. It matters where our customers live. So if they live in the European Union, we need to adhere to the GDPR. And the law covers all people who live there, not just the citizens, but everybody who's there. If you're from the EU and you live outside the EU, it does not cover you. And if our company violates the GDPR, we can be fined for up to £20 million or 4% of our annual revenue, whichever is greater. The whichever is greater clause is a pretty big thing. To many large multinational corporations, 20 million might not matter, but 4% certainly does. If we look at 2018, Google made $33 billion. If they have to pay 4% of that, that's $1.3 billion in fines. And for you as an IT security professionals, this is something you can take to the board or to your CEO. This is something they understand. 4%, it's pretty easy math. Unless a data subject, that would be one of the individuals in the EU, has given consent to use the data for one of our purposes, you cannot process it unless there's a legal reason to do so. And any personal data is really anything that can be identified as being yours. That's your name, your email address, your actual address, your IP address, anything that can be used to identify you. The GDPR also demands that you use certain randomization. Even if I have 500 people that agree that I can use their data and do analytics on it, it still shouldn't be possible to identify one person. And the only really exception or restriction to the GDPR is if the data is required by national security, military, police, or the justice system, then your identity might be unmasked. But outside of that, you have a ton of rights compared to what you had before. Anyone who holds your data have to provide you with a free copy of your data if you request it. You have the right to be forgotten, meaning if you request it, they have to delete all your data, with a few exceptions. You can't just call in and have your credit card information erased, because that's required by law, but if there's nothing that requires them by law to keep your data, you can have it erased. You also have the right to request your data in an electronic format. If you're going from one healthcare provider to another, you can request all your records. And the data breach notification. Users and data controllers must be notified within 72 hours of a breach. That is much sooner than what was in place before, and much sooner than pretty much anywhere else in the world. If you remember back to the US laws, you have to notify, but it doesn't have to be right away. And if your data was encrypted, maybe you don't have to notify at all. The Equifax breach took weeks, maybe months before they told anyone they had been breached. Then obviously, as a company, we need to ensure that the customer data is safe. But we can also only collect what is absolutely necessary for the completion of our duties. We cannot collect anything else. And any company whose activity involves data processing and monitoring must appoint a data protection officer. You have someone who's directly responsible that we follow the GDPR. Senior management is ultimately liable still, but just because they're ultimately liable doesn't mean that no one else is.